Richie Hardcore, welcome.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you very much for dropping by.
You're welcome.
From the moment I started doing this, I was telling you before that a lot of people were saying you have to get Richie on your show.
Well, that's very humbling. Unless, of course, they just wanted to see me be a dick. But
Be a dick.
Either way, thanks, man. I'm always like genuinely like, oh wow, you want to talk to me? Thanks, man. Weird. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Sweet, bro. So tell me a little bit about yourself, just in generalities. So you're a former kickboxer or Muay Thai?
Muay Thai, So I guess I'm a former multiple champion with a sport called Muay Thai. So in the early 2000s, I was the man. But that was before the sport is what it is now. You know, the professionalism and the ability of the athletes is really elevated in recent years. But yeah, I sort of developed, I guess, a bit of a following doing fight sports, and won a South Pacific title, and before the King of the Ring was a tournament, I won 4-man titles and got to, fight overseas, and it really has been a continuing and continues to be like a really huge positive part of my life. When I retired from fighting, I moved into coaching, and I've had some really good success training some good professional fighters into helping them achieve like titles of their own. And they've actually gone a lot further than I ever went in my own career. So that's really, it's cool to give back, you know. And and to be honest, a lot of the people I train don't have professional ambitions as fighters. They're just looking for health and wellness and fitness and a sort of place to be. And it feels really good to provide that. I was a pretty insecure, shy kid, and martial arts really transformed me. And so it's real cool when people from all walks of life come through the gym and I can help them get out of it what I get out of it. So I do that, and I've become an educator and public speaker and sort of keynote speaker, and I talk about a range of topics, but I guess those topics are quite interrelated. So I worked for the Ministry of Health for a long time in alcohol and drug harm reduction at a community level. So that's something that I now talk about, is like what are evidence-based approaches to reducing alcohol and drug harm? Why do we have these problems? What can we do about it? What can you do about it as an individual? I talk about mental health, my own experiences of depression and anxiety, and what sort of led to that and what helped me through that, and why we have such a huge range of those. Why we have such an explosion of mental health issues in the Western world. And mainly I talk about masculinity and what it's historically being conceptualized as, and how we can change that because of the problems that these stereotypical boxes that we put in cause. And then from that, sexual violence prevention and family violence prevention. Those are sort of my main subject areas. And yeah, I work for myself. So I've spoken in universities in Australia and businesses here and schools and sports teams, and anyone who's interested in having those conversations with an audience, Spoken in prisons. When I spoke at Purumurimu last year, that was quite moving. Man, and that's what I hope to keep doing for the foreseeable future, is speaking to larger and larger audiences about things that we need to address as a society.
So what was a turning point that made you go from kickboxer to, or maybe there's a crossover, what was it that made you want to get into the public speaking or getting in that direction?
I was getting pretty forgetful, bro. I was like, where are my car keys? I've been smacked in the head too much. So I was teaching, I was personal training and teaching kickboxing while I was putting myself through university in the mid-2000s. And then I did start working for the ministry when I graduated eventually. And I had all these side hustles. So I was teaching kickboxing after hours, and I was doing radio outside of the day job, and all these other little bits and pieces. And eventually I went through a really rough personal patch in 2016, and I'd done a little public speaking whilst I was working at the ministry outside of ministry hours, and not at the ministry, sorry, that's a misrepresentation. It was a Ministry of Health project within Auckland Council. Anyway, so the ministry just paid me. Not just me either. There's like a whole bunch of other people. It wasn't like my special job. But yeah, I came to a point where I wanted to retire from fighting. And then I went through all this real sort of like rough personal shit, got proper depressed, went through a really rough breakup. And that was sort of like an impetus for like, I'm kind of over this job. I'm kind of over of like 9 to 5. Doesn't really fit me. It's always been a struggle to like wear a shirt and, just be myself. I'm really good at being myself. I'm not really good at being, I guess, orthodox in some ways. So I went into work and I'd had like a month off because I was proper depressed as well. And my manager was this really awesome young guy called Brian, who I said, hey man, like, how would you feel if I resigned? He went, oh my God, I've been waiting for you to do that pretty much since I met you. Like, go, please. Like, please go and you will flourish. And he made my transition out, like, really, really easy. And
so just give me a timeline. So
that was 2016.
That was 2016.
Yeah, so I've been speaking as a living,
Yeah.
like, for the last, 3 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing, man. Like, I'm like, yo, like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm speaking to like medical students and stuff in Adelaide, and it's not huge. I'm not fucking Tony Robbins, but like, I'm always like, oh wow, this is weird. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's rad.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, I think going to university when I was 26 really set me on a good path. Because I was just working dead end jobs, kickboxing, and that was enough for me from my teens all through to my mid 20s.
Yeah.
But then I got to a point where I was like, I actually want to do more than this. And I was living in Melbourne with my partner at the time, and the job kind of sucked, and I was running out of excuses of why I couldn't go into work that day, you know, and they were getting more and more creative.
Yeah.
And then I decided to move back to New Zealand and study. And my academic studies gave me like a skill set that I could
exactly
apply.
did you study? Sorry.
I did a double major in political science in Spanish, and then I did my honors degree in Spanish.
Right.
And Spanish, people think, oh, it's just the language, but actually that's like a third of it. Most of it's like historical, sociological aspects of the Latin-speaking world. So I wrote my dissertation on the development of gang culture in El Salvador, and that's taking those sorts of tools like sociological causatives and historical causatives and the impacts of policy are things that we can apply to a lot of different fields. So I've chosen to apply it to gender-based violence and the prevention of it.
What was it that put you toward that?
I grew up with family violence. I love my dad, and we're really close, and he's made a lot of changes and given his apologies. But growing up was difficult because of my father's alcoholism and it wasn't like once war. It wasn't like there was violence every weekend, but it was a feature of my early childhood, and then again when my father relapsed when I was a teenager. So those really formative years, really shaped me, man. They really shaped me. And I've always gravitated towards how do we be different, So when all my friends got into drinking and drugs, I wasn't into it. Like I experimented after my initial rejection of things when I was like 15 and everyone was getting wasted, and I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I experimented a bit when I was a bit older and mucked around and like puked up and woke up. We
you got to make mistakes.
Like, you have to make mistakes. Did we make out? Like, what happened? You can't. And I'm thankful for those experiences because it allows me to speak from more of an informed position these days as someone who's publicly sober.
Yeah.
But those experiences really shaped me. And when I was sort of in my late teens and early 20s, I really started getting into political exploration through music. I'd always gravitated towards like Public Enemy and Rage Against the Machine and shit like that when I was like 12, 13, 14, 15. And then I discovered this scene of music called hardcore, which is kind of where I take my name from. And hardcore is like a subgenre of the punk scene, come out of New York City, and very politicized music, and particularly in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that continues today. Bands are singing about veganism and feminism and social justice and stopping racism. And I was like this angry kid, I'd historically listened to like gangster rap and metal, and then here's this music with this sound that I fucking loved, and at the same time was about something, and I really like, this makes sense to me. And then from that, I started exploring feminist literature and giving myself a degree of an education. And so the work I do now really stems from the songs I'd sing along to in some regards, on top of my early experiences of, seeing my mum crying with black eye,
Man, that's tough. That is hard going.
Unfortunately, it's too common, man. Like New Zealand's got the highest rate of reported family violence in the Western world.
Yeah.
I think there's a call to the police every 4 minutes that's family violence related in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Is that right?
Yeah, so my experiences are not atypical, unfortunately.
What are some of the, you must have some pretty harrowing stories then from other people who want to share themselves with you as well?
Yeah. Being like a degree of a public figure in a small country, a lot of people have got in touch and disclosed what's going on with them, or they're looking for help, or they just want to share. Particularly with social media, you know. So there have been a couple of times when I've done even interviews with American websites or whatever, and the feedback's been insane. Like, particularly before Facebook changed its algorithm, you could put something on Facebook, and it literally would have like 3 million people would see that. You know, that's the chance of that happening now is a lot less due to the change in the algorithm, but so the feedback will be wild. You get people from all over the world, like sending you their experiences or their sad story, or where do I get help for this, you know? And this is like a range of issues, you know, like whether it's men talking about their pornography addiction, or women talking about the experience of sexual violence, or men talking about the experience of sexual violence. I've come to understand that if you talk about these issues, you're going to get a lot of disclosures, and that at times has been hard for my own mental health. And I'm learning as I evolve in the space to put parameters around my availability, I suppose.
Sure.
Because I don't want to hang out with my girlfriend and her son and have a fucking fun day sometimes and not think about, not think about, but like, I'm pretty sensitive, I suppose. And when someone tells me what's happened to them and it's horrific, that can't not affect me. You know, so it's about like, I check my messages at these times, and you know what I mean? And I always try really hard to not buy into it on a too, you don't want to, you can't do the work for people either. I think a lot of people who have been through trauma, as a person who's been through trauma, you know, you develop really poor boundaries, or you're at high risk of it. So I have to be mindful of keeping like a professional distance in that space as well. Yeah. You
got to be careful not to attract too much negativity into your life, otherwise it starts to affect you as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even call it negativity, it's just hurt, you know? Like, so many people are hurt, you know? You talk about mental health and stuff, you know, so many people want, you know, I'm depressed, or I've been suicidal, or this happened, or my uncle tried to kill himself and I'm not sure what to do. Like, where do I get help? People don't really know where to get help, and I'm more than happy to send them like hopefully a helpful list on, here are some services, here's some professional assistance, this is what's worked in my experience, and it's evidence based, like, you know. But you can't like always respond all the time, because it just ends up taking away from you. There's only so much, we'll have a finite amount of energy, you know. So I'm just learning to give people what they need, and I know does help, and then at the same time not get stuck in that constant conversation cycle. So
if in your personal journey, having the experiences you had as a kid with an abusive father to a degree, and that type of thing, what was it that, and then you started to experiment a little bit as well in your teens and that sort of stuff, what was it that pulled you away from it? Was it Muay Thai, or was it sport?
Definitely. So what really set me up, I guess, on a good path, and I have this tattoo on my leg, and it's the logo for my fight team. It's Fighting Saved My Life. I started doing martial arts when I was 13, and my dad was in a period of recovery from then, and he took me to a Taekwondo school, and I asked him about this a couple of years back, and I said, why did you take me to Taekwondo? And he said, well, I took you to the instructor, and I said, I'm not doing a very good job as a dad. Maybe you could help my son. And I always get a bit emotional talking about that, because I think that's a really big admission.
It's a brave thing to say.
It's a brave thing to say for a man to say to another man. And to me, that is being a good parent, is admitting your faults and your gaps and your flaws, and seeing that maybe your son needs a bit more than you can give him at the time. So I'm really appreciative to my father for that. So I got into Taekwondo when I was 13, and it was the first thing I was ever really good at. You know, like, I was quite good. I was really good at fighting. And I started that when I was 13, and I'm 39 next month. So I've been doing martial arts consistently for the last 26 years. And I had my first fight when I was 13, And you know, in a competitive sense. I'd had a bunch of fights in primary school, but that didn't count, you know.
No.
Yeah, and then so that really gave me like an internal resilience and like started giving me some self-esteem and some self-worth. And so when people were like, yo, like, you know, tease me for the way I dress, because I was really into like being alternative, and like I used to dye my hair pink and wear yellow dock boots and like be as different as I could from the all boys rugby high school that I went to. That was quite like super bro dude jock. And me
what school?
Kelston Boys.
Oh, Kelston, true.
Yeah. Graham Henry was my principal. Yeah, the old All Blacks coach.
Yeah, true.
He was actually cool. He wouldn't remember, but I saw him at the gym one time, you know, as an adult, and I said, "Hey, you probably won't remember me, but I just want to acknowledge that you were really great when you were my principal. Like, we'd had some chats, and he'd give me like a, you know, hassle me for the way I looked or whatever, but he also encouraged me in other areas, and I really, I don't know, it was a positive experience for an educated, you know."
Was he a hands-on principal with students?
As far as I remember him, I mean, that's fucking a long time ago
but you know what I mean? Like some principals, they just sit behind a desk and they just take care of the money side of things.
I remember him being out and about, and you know, like we were the world champion first 15 rugby team and stuff. I hated all that back then, because I associated that culture with all the things that I thought were wrong with the world, and I guess to some degree I still have my biases, but that's not because of a sport or anything. It's because of what we can talk about later. Sure. Some of the associations that go along with what we're expected to be like as men. You know, like those old notions of masculinity. Boys don't wear, you know, like boys don't wear pink and all that sort of shit. That's the sort of shit that was common in the school I went to. You know what I mean? Don't be a fucking fag. Like all those sorts of homophobic, like, did you score on the weekend type. I grew up in a real alpha male culture, and I rejected it, you know, from quite a young age. But at the same time, I was going to the gym and doing like bro dude shit, like, and it was an interesting sort of, I don't know, like, what do you call that? Not paradox. That's the wrong word.
Dichotomy.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So there's that, and then within the hardcore, so that was one, I guess we would call protective factor. And then the other thing was that I gravitated towards the hardcore scene, as I was saying, and within the hardcore scene is a movement called straight edge, and straight edge is a lifetime personal commitment to abstinence from alcohol, drugs, and smoking. And some people put promiscuous sex on that too. And while I didn't call myself straight edge till I was like 26, I had these older, cooler friends who lived in the city, and I was like living in West Auckland. They lived in the city, and they had cool style, and they had tattoos, and they sang in cool bands, and they'd been to New York, and like, and I was 17. I was like, yo, that's fucking cool. And these guys don't tease me for not drinking like all the guys out in West Auckland. You know what I mean? And it was like just cool energy, and I was like, this is dope. And the music was about meaningful shit, as I was saying. So I really gravitated towards the hardcore scene and straight edge within that. And while I would drink and do stupid shit, my older friends who were straight edge would be like, oh, yo, man, like, that's not what's up. You don't have to get fucked up, you know? Whereas out west, it was like, yeah, boys, fucking... You know? Like, And so I increasingly had this, like, crew of people who were just cool with me being different. Instead of, like, trying to make me drink or whatever, get fucked up or smoke weed or take acid or any of that shit. You know what I mean? So those two things really sort of coalesced and gave me, like, a healthy place to be. You know? Like, I had all my anger and frustrations and insecurities and all the ways that, you know, growing up in a dysfunctional family affect you. And I had these two places where I could go and scream along to heavy music and feel close to people who had different ideas about the world. And then I had sport, and that sport was very cathartic, you know, just, you know, you touch gloves and you fight, like try and knock another man out, and then you hug at the end of it though. That's what people don't see. You know, people think, people have this, what do you call this? Man, I was Googling this term the other day.
Well, it's almost like a preconceived notion that I understand what you're saying, because I played rugby at a pretty good level back in the day. And it was, you had that outlet You know what I mean?
Had that outlet.
As a dude, you had the outlet.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing now a lot of is people are trying to stop boys from doing that type of thing.
And I think that's wrong, man.
I totally agree.
I think
Yeah.
the term I was looking for is false equivalency. So people often say, how can you work in anti-family violence and be involved in a violent sport? But that's a false equivalency.
Yeah.
Being involved in a sport where the outcome is physical harm to the other person
Yeah.
is in no way, shape or form related to family violence or gender-based violence. You know, in a combat sports situation or a rugby situation, it's weight restricted. You know, there's consent, there's rules. If someone says stop, you have to stop.
There's a mediator.
Yeah, there's a mediator. Gender-based violence is about unequal power dynamics.
You have to control your own emotions.
Yeah. And if do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So, people create these false equivalencies, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
But I think we need to, sport doesn't have to be a rough sport. I mean, rugby's fucking rough. Thai boxing rough. My neck's fucked. You know, like I'm limping all the time. Same with your rugby. I'm sure you got some injuries.
Absolutely.
You know, you could be into fucking badminton or gymnastics or whatever, but human beings are designed to move. Yeah. You know, and
to compete.
And I don't know about to compete, but I know that healthy competition is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like it definitely gave me a sense of fucking self-worth, you know? Like I can distinctly remember as my body changed and I became muscular and yada, 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 and I could run faster and kick more and all of that sort of stuff. At the same time, so did my spirit, man. Like, I was a kid who like wet the bed till I was like 11 years old, you know? Yeah. And fucking then I was like this confident kid who would stand up for the kids who were getting bullied. Yeah. You know, when I was 16, I was like, yo, what the fuck? Like, why are you teasing that Asian kid? Like, don't be racist. And people are like, oh, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, well, what? Let's go. And then be like, oh, yeah, sweet then. You know, like, I'm not saying that violence is, but like when you're a 16-year-old boy and you don't have like...
It's the mentality behind the violence. Like, are you picking on somebody just to dominate them or are you protecting somebody?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what I've found is that when you are a confident person, people hassle you less anyway, to some degree. Yeah. I mean, tall poppy syndrome is a whole different conversation, but you know what I'm saying? Like when you can stand up for other people, most bullies are actually quite insecure in themselves. Like bullying actually is something we should feel sorry for bullies on some level, as much as the people that they bully, because clearly it's symptomatic of, hey, what's really going on with you, man? And
that's I couldn't agree more with that. I get tired of people pulling up bullies or people or society pulling up people who have different ideals or toxic masculinity, for example. But it's like there's two sides or more than two sides. You've got to look at it from a lot of different angles. Why are they thinking the way they are? Why are they doing what they do?
Yeah, and that's hard because when people are victimized and are hurt or bullied or abused, like your instant emotional reaction is to punish the person who did that. Yeah, I get that, you know. But at the same time, if we really want to get to stopping these problems happening, we need to look at like, okay, why is the perpetrator doing these things? Yeah. What is their lived experience? What is the broader culture that they've grown up in? Yeah. Have they ever had a positive intervention in their life that might steer them on a different path? You know, like I'm fortunate that I've had really, just through chance, man, like I'm truly grateful that I've bumped into like amazing people who have steered me on a really good course, and not everyone's that lucky. Just as I'm do all this stuff now, like I could just as easily be selling drugs or in jail or kill myself. You know, like that was kind of like that's quite an easy road for me to have potentially followed. I'm cognizant of. But I'm fortunate that I had some touch points that set me on a different path, and not everyone has that. That doesn't excuse bullying or the violence that people perpetrate on other people or problematic ideals. But we can't just shun those people and lock them up forever. We need to figure out, well, how do we work with them and talk with them, not at them and blame and shame them, to really help them change. Hey, and if we've had that conversation of don't change, well then, well fuck, go live in the Stone Ages then, you know what I mean? But you need to at least have that opening conversation. You know?
We need discussion, we need critical thinking as well.
We need critical thinking.
Sit there and have good chats. Yeah. That's what I like about this platform, like podcasting. Like I can sit down here with anybody, we can just talk about stuff and, you know, chew the fat.
Yeah.
We're not always going to agree on everything.
And-
but it's interesting to know you've got to have a yin to the yang for a lot of things.
Exactly.
You talk about it.
I used to be, particularly when I finished uni, when and I just, like, done a politics degree and stuff, and I was into, like, social issues and social justice. I was quite self-righteous, particularly with my sobriety, as well. I was like, well, fuck, like, my fucking childhood was hard, fucking, and I don't drink, and I don't do drugs. Like, fuck you, you're just a weak person, like, drugs are for fucking sluts and losers, like, all this judgmental, self-righteous, fucking up my own ass bullshit. And it wasn't till, like, I made some, like, really big mistakes and sort of fucked up my personal life a bit in my early 30s that I was like, oh, yo, that was humbling, like, you were an asshole, and I've been on this constant journey ever since to be like, maybe there is not, like, life's not black and white. It's this big weird gray area, and good people do bad things and bad people do good things, and we don't know what we don't know till we know it. And it's how do we encourage people to think more critically, as you say, and think more broadly. And even if we don't agree about certain things, be respectful in that, like... Yeah, whereas I used to be like, you vote for these people, you're a bad person, or you eat meat, you're a bad person, or you sell drugs, you're a bad person. So I'm wearing a t-shirt right now that says, some of my friends sell drugs,
I saw that.
which is a lyric from a band that I love called Trophy Eyes.
Right.
But I used to have this t-shirt that said, drugs are for sluts and losers. And I thought that.
Times change.
Your times have changed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd actually should do one of those 10-year challenges photos with, like, me in the old folk t-shirt and me in the new t-shirt. Yeah. I don't approve of selling drugs. Drugs are harmful. Drugs cause all manner of social harm, personal harm, physiological harm. But at the same time, not everyone who sells drugs is an inherently bad person. Maybe they're just... there's a whole range of causatives why someone...
For some people, it's a means to an end.
For some people, it's a means to an end. Yeah, I don't agree with it. Just like I don't agree with selling cigarettes or selling alcohol. No. Those things are terrible, and kill millions of people worldwide. But it's weird to me that socially we can say, well, you can sell alcohol, which kills 2.5 million people globally every year, but you're a bad person for selling a tinny, which has killed no one. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, and we'll get the alcohol companies to promote their products every single day on social media feeds. Yeah. And we'll get influencers to have the Moe tennis or the Heineken Open or whatever the fuck. Yeah. And, do you know what I mean? And we'll socially applaud them. Good job, great business. Your wine is amazing.
How do you feel when... Because marijuana is going to be legalized eventually.
Yeah.
Quicker than... I think a lot sooner than a lot of people realize. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good thing. Yep. I mean... I don't use drugs, and cannabis is a harmful drug. Anyone who says, "Oh, it's a miracle cure to fucking anything," is unfortunately not educated. Yep. Like cannabis is really good for dealing with the symptoms of some illnesses and the treatment of them, like cancer. Yeah. And there is some emerging research that shows that it can have a positive impact in combating some cancers, but it's not like firm empirical evidence, yet it's emerging. So we need to be mindful of that, and at the same time be like, oh, cannabis is harmless. Cannabis isn't harmless, particularly to young developing brains.
Up to the age of 25, it can do some serious damage.
Particularly if you have a susceptibility to mental illness or a history of mental illness, and you're doing neurological chemistries a little different to like typical neurological chemistry, then heavy cannabis use can really push people into unhealthy conditions.
And it's that age group that are most susceptible to using it. They're the ones that are going to get targeted to use it more.
Exactly, yeah. So, man, when I was 15, I've been to tinny houses and bought drugs for my friends. Yep. And no one ever checked my ID or asked me how old I was, or even did I have any conception that I was even buying cannabis, Yeah. They could have been like, oh, we don't have any, but you can have some of this. Now people are dying of synthetics in 2018, 19,
Oh, the synthetic shit.
Yeah, so to legalize it, I think, is actually a really positive social change that will hopefully create less harm that drugs cause. Because cannabis does cause harm. And particularly causes harm in marginalized communities and, communities of people of color, people that have historically been discriminated against, and live through a whole bunch of different structural oppressions, they carry a much heavier burden of when it comes to drug-related harm,
Yeah.
So we need to be mindful of that. If we are going to legalize drugs, starting with cannabis, that it's not a free-for-all on the free market the way that we have done with alcohol.
Yeah.
There should never be a cannabis brand promoting their shit to get more people to buy their shit.
There's a social responsibility.
There's a social responsibility to it. I think that potentially the state could sell it. So you have government dispensaries of cannabis, and all the money goes back into the social system to pay for education and treatment and yada yada yada, and the money goes back into the state coffers, as opposed to let's get some huge multinational corporation to come in, encourage people to buy a product which has potentially got negative health outcomes, and then take all the money out of the country, because we know that multinational corporations pay fuck all tax. You know what I mean? So how we roll it out is where it's going to sort of make or break it,
Yeah. So the next couple of years are going to be really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, capitalism could step right in and they'll take full advantage of the opposite.
Man, I just got back from LA. Like I was in, California for a couple of weeks with my girlfriend over Christmas and that. Man, it's like CBD, everything, cannabis dispensaries everywhere. You literally everyone is smoking weed in the street, because there's not firm. I mean, there are regulations, but I would say that the market is going to unfortunately encourage more use there.
I always had this thought that if
I need to check the figures on that though. I
always had this thought that if we ever did legalize marijuana, the whole country's going to shut down for 3 months because everyone's just going to be fucking stoned.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think that's true though. If you look at what happened in Portugal, which is the model that everyone uses to showcase,
it's amazing what they do there.
Yeah. So they decriminalized all drugs, and I think there's a mild increase in cannabis use initially, but then all other drug use actually reduced from memory. I need to double check that data, but from an evidence base, decriminalizing drugs actually means that people can do them less, because you can also go and ask for help instead of worrying about criminal repercussions of, I'm using an illegal drug. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Amsterdam was interesting. I went there, and everyone outside of Holland, they talk about, Amsterdam, you can smoke pot and blah, 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 go to these cafes, da, 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 da. But when you get there, it's a tiny little... It's not broadcast everywhere. It's a tiny little leaf on a cafe, and you go in there and you do your thing and all that sort of stuff. They don't make a big deal of it. In fact, hardly anyone in those cafes are Dutch.
Yeah.
It's all English, Australians, New Zealanders, and they're getting stoned. And French.
I think I read something like that. They were putting new crackdowns on tourism, cannabis tourism, because it's not Dutch people going crazy. It's all these repressed Europe.
So not only with that, but also prostitution. So they've slowed it right down.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? They've closed a lot of I don't think, I could be wrong here, but there used to be for lack of a better term, smorgasbord of women behind glass windows, and you can go up and choose and all that sort of stuff. It's all there. You can see it when you walk down certain streets. That's gone.
Right.
And, just again, listening and listening and listening.
Yeah, right.
It's still there. It's still legal, but
it's
if
not
you want
so much
it,
of a tourist attraction.
It's not a tourist attraction. Because they're just getting the worst kinds of people there. But, the pot thing I always found interesting, and America's just going crazy for it at the moment.
Yeah, and there's big benefits for some. Again, see, that's where it becomes unbalanced. Yeah. A whole bunch of... people have historically gone to jail for, a life sentence for cannabis cultivation. And those people generally tend to be, African American. Yeah. Whereas now you've got a whole bunch of, smart fucking white guys making tons of money for doing exactly the same thing. So it's how do you balance that out? Do you offer
compensation for it?
Yeah, do you offer compensation, or do you pardon everyone who's got this? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Particularly California or Colorado or Washington, the places where it's illegal. Yeah. So it's interesting times, man.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be fascinated to see how it rolls out here and how it's all going.
Yeah, I think the 2020 referendum that the government has proposed will definitely come down in favor of legalizing cannabis.
And they want to do the referendum at the same time as the election.
Yeah, so I think is it at the same? So is it an exit? It'll be in your ballot?
It'll be in the ballot.
Yeah.
Apparently, I don't like that idea. I'd rather they kept it separate.
Really? Why?
because I think that I want people going in to vote for government thinking about the government. I want people going in and thinking about, I'm going to vote for pot, right?
Yeah, right.
Because, and I see it as a political play too, because you've got the centre left here, which is Labour and Greens. They're all like, oh, if we do this now, we're going to get more of our supporters turning up to vote for pot.
Which is fair, yeah.
You know? So that's my concern. I'd rather those two things be separate. Yes, we should absolutely have it. We should have the election for both, but not at the same time.
Yeah, sure. I think given the way that people tend to not turn out when it matters, I'm down for it to be at the same time, I guess, without having given it any thought prior to now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's just a political spin that
I'm just into like getting people to vote regardless. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. I mean, research says that 52% of New Zealanders have tried cannabis at some stage in their lifetime anyway. So more people have smoked weed than not. At least tried it. Yeah. So I can't see that failing. And I think it's just about the messaging. It's not saying legalizing cannabis isn't saying it's fucking harmless. Just like, tobacco kills people. 5 million a year annually, last I read, causes all manner of social harms. It's disgusting. And those corporations have to, those corporations are regulated though. You know what I mean? If it was illegal, like people would still be smoking, I imagine. Yeah. So putting some sort of frameworks around it it's a good thing.
Yeah. I think on the whole addiction side of things, speak about addiction in general, I think social media, the way that it's playing out at the moment, even 4 or 5 years ago, it was a different beast to what it is now. Now you can become a celebrity just by posting things and putting things up. And it's insane how it's just ruining our social fabric and the way we communicate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. As someone who has probably a bit of a social media habit, I definitely have like a problematic amount of use with my own social media. Yeah. Because you get all the little dopamine rewards. You're like, yeah, I got some likes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it can become quite an addictive behavior. And I definitely see that having negative impacts on young people, so many people these days like get social anxiety about they can't answer the phone anymore. They're only used to like texting. Right. Yeah, right. And like people at my age, like people in their 30s too, we increasingly are divorcing like human communication from humans. Do you know what I mean? Like,
do you remember when you were a kid and you'd be at home with family or whatever, or this is my family anyway, and like people would just turn up. Knock on the door. Hey, we're coming for a barbecue. And you're like, sweet, cool. These days, someone knocks on the door. It's like, who the fuck is that? What the fuck? Who? Why? Did someone call you? Did someone text you? I'm not expecting anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's bad. Like humans are meant to. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into communication that is non-verbal. So it's not just like the words on the screen that that matter. It's your body language. It's a tap on the shoulder. It's the look in someone's eyes. It's how their face looks when they're expressing whatever. All that stuff matters, and so much miscommunication happens because we're trying to express big ideas on text or Twitter, or do you know what I mean? Like, and so much, and then people jump to assumption, or or you're clumsy with words, or you're tired, or you didn't get I didn't mean it like that, and then it's like screenshot and retweeted to like 1 million people, and then you're a fucking bad person because you didn't express yourself that well. And in our personal lives too, people are like, oh, you send me a Facebook message or blah, 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 or what do you mean by this? Everything's open to interpretation and there's no chance to explain it. If I said something now and you're like, what do you mean by that? I get a chance to back and forth with you to extrapolate out my point.
Or you could just see it on your face, the way you said
exactly. Or you understand the context from which I'm coming.
Getting into new relationships now is a fucking nightmare when it comes to that because you're texting, especially for us who are older, like above 35, where you're reading small, actually no, this is everybody, they're reading small stupid little things in one word. She just sent me one word. Why one word?
Well, yeah, exactly.
What does she mean? And this is such a common thing. I have conversations with people all the time and it's hilarious about what do they mean? What does this mean? They just said yes. They just agreed.
I know. And then we want and then we all have it makes us anxious. It can really lead to some poor mental health outcomes. And I think I don't have a solution to it, but I definitely think there's a time and place for like, yo man, like why don't you just fucking give them a phone call, or why don't you go see them and talk about it instead of you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had a couple of people like troll me quite badly on like Facebook, whatever, and I've definitely seen them in the street and gone up to them like, yo man, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, why did you write that about me?
You watched their bollocks drop.
No, yeah, like, not like, yeah, and they did nothing to say in real life. Yeah. And it just showed how, like, and like, not trying to be cruel, but I'm like, you're clearly a socially inadequate person right now. Yeah. Using social media to try and somehow, like, I feel sorry for them. Yeah. I mean, if I'm speaking compassionately, I'm like, I'm sorry that this is your life and that you feel it's important to make fun of or attack or whatever other people in order to get some sort of validation out of that. But that's not healthy, man. Like, and I've hit them up on the street and I'm like, yo, you're the most unimpressive fucking person I've ever met.
I feel almost as sorry for those people as I do for the people they were attacking, because clearly they've got social issues, they've got sort of self-esteem issues.
Exactly.
That sort of
but then I'm like, yo, the shit you say on the internet, that hurts, man. Like, I've been on the end of a bit of that stuff and it hurts. It keeps you up at night. It bothers you. But then the extreme end of that is like Charlotte Dawson, who killed herself, you know? And I'm friends with enough people who've got much bigger profiles than I have, and the shit that they put up with online is fucking despicable. And no one should have to deal with that. People would think that because it's a words on the screen and someone might be famous or whatever, or have a degree of celebrity or be well known, like, oh, they're somehow impervious to having feelings. It's like, nah. And that goes back to that when you don't see the human reaction of your words, you actually stop being cognizant of the impact that they have. You know, if I said, yo, fuck you, you fat fuck, and you'd be like, oh, what? I'd see you like be upset, right? Or you'd punch me in the mouth, or you'd start crying, or something would happen.
But there'd be a reaction.
And I would see it, and I would be like, oh, maybe that was a bit, you know? And then, whereas on the internet, that doesn't happen. And in fact, on the internet, particularly in Twitter, in my experiences, if you say something smart and mean about someone, and it's a form of like getting props, like people retweet it. You know what I mean? People are like, yeah, what's up? That was a good one. You know, and then something can get really viral and you can get super validated from saying something mean about someone. Yeah. And hey, it's all good. Some people deserve like criticism, but you can criticize someone without attacking them personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Saying things like you might want to rethink about how you're saying things to somebody rather than saying you're a dick.
Yeah, totally. It's not even a dick these days. It's like, your idea is different to mine, so I'm going to character assassinate you and bring up some shit that you said 6 years ago. Fuck, I'm different from how I was 6 days ago.
We're all different as well in terms of the spectrum of political whatever, you know? Yeah. I mean, I consider myself to be liberal, progressive, but I'm also conservative in all the ways I think. I'm never going to be hard liberal because they're starting to act like dicks now anyway. So there's certain but it's this attacking thing. Like the hard left I'm talking about are so almost violently they violently defend their position or disagree with you if you disagree with one thing that they don't agree with.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and then there's the right-hand side as well. So I'm sort of in the middle. I just want to hear from everything up for my own opinion.
That's where I've come to find myself too. Actually, Rachel Stewart, who's a social commentator, environmentalist, and she writes for the Herald, she wrote about that in the Herald today. Yeah. She's like, the far right and the far left hate me. So I'm just here to talk. I'm like in the middle.
And I think that's a good place to be.
And that's where I found myself increasingly too, because I did used to be far more to the left. Yeah. But the most, like, not just like attacks of my ideas, but attacks on me as a human being have come from the far left on Twitter, you know, or some whack blogger or whatever. Yep. And I'm like, hey man, like, you didn't even ask me about that. Or you didn't even ask for my point of view, or yada, yada, yada. Yeah. How can you say that? Even if you've ever met me. Yep. You don't know anything about me. And you're writing this and sharing it to a larger audience. And then for some people, that's who you become. Like this misrepresentation, this purposeful misrepresentation. And I think that's really I don't think that's a healthy way for society to develop, man. We increasingly become like extreme ends of things. And I vaguely remember like second year comparative politics, when societies descend into violence is when things become further and further extrematized. You know, like when you have the far left on one end or the far right on the other end, that's when it leads to like physical conflict. And you're starting to see that in America when you look at like the violent rallies that are happening with the alt-right turning up and then Antifa turning up, and then it's like, cool, let's fucking juke it out, you know? And that's no way for a society to function healthily.
No. I've always said, like, ever since I was younger, it was the ones with the biggest smirk on their face of arrogance seemed to be the people who are more progressive, and they used to annoy me. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You eat meat?
Yeah,
you know, they're the first ones. You eat fucking meat, and they smirk, and I'm like, I'm going to eat more meat now.
Yeah, and I used to be one of those people. To some degree, like, you're not a vegetarian and you drink whack. Like, you're such a fucking caveman. Yeah. And now I'm like, whatever, man, you do you. Yeah. Like, and then if people, and I used to be a fucking self-righteous dick, you know?
Yeah.
It came from, like,
it comes from a good place.
I do think, eating meat is morally wrong, but I'm not going to say you're a bad person because you eat meat anymore. Yeah. Because, hey, man, what works for me might not work for you, or maybe you even never thought about it. You know, you know what I mean? Or maybe you've got like a fucking inflammatory bowel disease, and you eating heaps of legumes just doesn't work for you, or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or maybe you just like meat a whole lot. Like, I do think that that's not how people should live, but I'm not going to impose myself upon you and make you a bad, you know, like. Yeah.
The best thing to do is just set an example. Be the example of what you want to be. That's what
I've come to learn, man. Like 100%. Like, as soon as I stopped trying to tell people how to live and just did my own shit,
people started listening.
People started listening, and people also started, more importantly, asking me about my lifestyle. Yeah. Because people are like, "What are you up to today?" Or "How come you don't drink?" Or "I never see you fucking at Big McDonald's." Yeah. Or like, you know, like, "How can you stay so fit all the time?" People ask me that shit. People be like, "How old are you?" And I'm like, I'm nearly 40. And they're like, "But I just saw you ran a half marathon for a laugh." And I was like, yeah, because I don't drink and I watch what I eat and I don't smoke crack, you know, like, and I work out. And people are like, "Oh, yo, maybe I could get some of that too because I want to feel better and feel younger." Do you know what I mean? Yep. So I think exactly what you say, when you start just doing your best, because none of us are perfect and we will have our hypocrisies and our fucking contradictions. Yeah. But when we do our best to live to the values that we believe, people are like, "Oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll hit the bro up." Yeah. As opposed to making people feel bad about themselves. Yeah. Yeah. And I think and that's a hard one. I want to write an article about this because I've seen all this pushback about the Gillette ad. Did you watch that? Yeah. Yeah. So many people have gone crazy about it. Yeah. Like, massively. They're like, like frothing at the mouth about how, like, men aren't bad. No one's saying in that ad that men aren't bad. They're saying that the stereotypical constructs of masculinity are the problem and the behaviors that stem from that. And so it's like, okay, people didn't get that, so maybe the messaging was done wrong. So it's not what we're saying, it's how we're saying it as well. And I'm really interested in exploring that more as a topic.
It was interesting, that Gillette ad, because I saw it, and when I first saw it, I was on that Bandcamp. I was like, what the fuck, man? This is shit. Why is every man being represented like that? Then I stopped, did some research, and I started thinking about why did I react like that to it. And the thing that I've come to realize is I think it is a poorly executed commercial. I think the people that it's targeting, for example, if I'm a bad guy, right, I'm going to watch the Gillette ad, I'm not going to change my mind. I'm like, it's not going to change me. The only people that ad resonated with
are people like me, like masculinity educators.
Or people who have victim status, or people who feel victimized. Yeah. That's who the ad's relating to. Yeah. It's not relating to me. And the thing is, the thing that got me with it was, I would like to see a more positive message. For the last 2 years, we've been beaten over the head pretty hard. White straight guys, and within reason. And I think it's validated in most cases. But it's just got to a point now where that form of woke advertising is just a little bit, okay, can we move past that now a little bit?
So there's a bunch in that. Yep. So, yeah, if the goal, it depends on what the original goal of the advert was to do. If it's to create a conversation, well, they've done a great fucking job. You know?
They have.
If the goal is to encourage men who aren't considering the privilege that they have of just being born male, particularly like a straight white male, and the unearned privileges that gives you, then yeah, you're not going to necessarily buy into that ad. If you're not going to reflect on all the shit that we learn from childhood about what it means to be a man is actually a bit of a problem. If we want people to think about that, then yeah, the ad's failed, right? If the job was to encourage men to be like, oh, yo, maybe my kid's not like a homo for playing with dolls, or maybe he doesn't need to play sports to get ahead in life, or maybe he's into art or poetry. Like, maybe he's not, it's not just girls who cry. You know, like we still, I think, would argue that we still gender particular behaviors, which I think are actually human rather than male or female. So the ad would have failed on that behalf. But and I agree with you. So you're right. Yeah, it is people like who already kind of get it, who are applauding it. So, but it depends on what the outset of. I mean, it depends on like what the desired outcome of the ad campaign was, I guess. I think it's raises good points and it's created a conversation.
Yes.
So my social media is like quite busy with it because all these dudes are like fucking blah blah blah, and I'm like, it's not saying men are bad just because you got a cock and balls. It's not saying you're a bad dude.
Also, the other thing with that ad though is like it's illustrating toxic masculinity, but so. It's also stripping our ability to defend ourselves by that ad. Because if we defend ourselves, that can be seen as toxic. We're like, oh no, you can't defend yourself because you just agree with it or whatever. So it's a catch-22.
I think you can defend yourself and say, yeah, it's a tough one. That is,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Yeah,
Like, because you're saying not all men. I like this, right? That's what you're saying, not all men. And
exactly.
And I would say
there's elements of bits in that ad that are absolutely, I'm a bit like that, or I'm a bit like this, or I'm a bit like that. And I'm learning, I'm changing, I've changed over the last few years.
And that's
good.
For sure. And you need to, like for your own self, let alone anyone else. But I do think there's space for us to constructively go, hey, we're not saying all men are like this, but we're saying a significant number of them are. And that these traditional ideas around masculinity, as much as they hurt women through sexual violence, objectification, harassment, they hurt men too. Who makes up the bulk of the prison population?
Men.
Who makes up the bulk of fatal road accidents, suicides, preventable disease deaths, homicides? Who's the biggest perpetrator of homicide? And who's the biggest perpetrator of sexual violence and family violence? It's men. And these stereotypical constructs of men have to be muscular, men have to take the lead, men have to be authoritative, men have to earn lots of money, men are meant to be stoic and not talk about their emotions, men need to score heaps of chicks, it's not good to be gay or anything remotely feminine, and we teach boys this from a real young age. What sort of toys do we give boys? Trucks, guns, fucking cars, fucking tools. What do we give girls? Like, here's some makeup and here's how you be pretty. And
totally.
I'm pretty sure I've seen some fucking like kitchen appliances too over the years. And then we have like all these gendered sort of expectations that we expect of boys and of girls. Like a boy who cries, we quite often say, don't cry, just it's fine, don't cry. Whereas we don't necessarily say that to a female child. We gender colors. Like, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing scientific that says girls have more of an inclination to pink and boys to blue, and we do that with behaviors and emotions as well. Like, guys are not meant to talk about their feelings to the degree that we expect women to. And then we wonder why boys are killing themselves.
Yeah, and the danger now,
I'm finding... Do you know what I mean?
So, absolutely,
it's about attacking... Not even attacking. It's about deconstructing those old ideas of what it means to be a man. Masculinity is like the traditional associations. If you look at the definition, it's not inherent or natural. Like, I don't think boys are any more inclined to... I don't know.
I think there are hormone. There are definite.
There's different. I'm not saying that there's
different.
I'm not saying there's differences between. So I believe in gender segregated sport. I don't think.
Totally.
I don't think men should fight women or rugby dudes should play female rugby, because biologically men are faster, stronger, bigger. I don't want to see women getting their heads caved in an MMA fight, fighting dudes. Like, I'm not saying. I'm not saying that there are... See, that's the thing. Like, those are sex differences.
Yes.
Your male sex and female sex, they're different. You're a big, tall, muscular dudes. On average, women are going to be different. I definitely know some women who
there's some freaks out there, for sure.
Or not even freaks, but just like hardworking athletes who could beat the shit out of me because they're better at kickboxing than me because they've worked harder at it. Yeah. But physiologically, like, there's differences between us. You know what I'm saying?
You don't think there's mental differences as well, especially at a young age?
I don't know the science on that, so I can't comment on that. I don't know if there's any brain difference between girls and girls and boys when it comes to how it comes to expressing emotions or expressing anger. As far as I understand, no. Like, I don't think that there is like a huge cerebral difference between men and women.
I would say hormonally there's definitely a difference in the way that we think when we get older, especially into adolescence and that sort of thing. But as younger, I mean, you watch girls...
Sure.
Play, it's different.
So
they come to talk to it, they communicate differently. Whereas boys, it's like fucking Braveheart. We're just beating the shit out of each other. Or
but I don't know if that's hormonal though. I think a lot of that.
I might be wrong there, but
I think a lot of that is cultural expectation. If you're saying boys beat the shit out of each other like Braveheart and girls talk about that, well, how have we role modeled those behaviors to them?
I just don't think. I think even as kids, I'm talking like much younger now. So let's go. I'm talking younger, 3, 4, all that sort of thing. I don't think they're old enough to realize that they're being molded into one way.
Okay, so I tell this story a lot. I've got a 4-year-old stepson, and I love that kid so much. And he's really into Care Bears, and he's also really into throwing rocks. He took his Care Bear to school, to kindy. And another boy, he came home really upset because his friend said, "I'm not playing with you because Care Bears are for girls." So if a 4-year-old boy, and this is only an anecdotal story, but if a 4-year-old boy can police another boy's behavior based on what's accepted for his gender identity, then that to me is a sign that, like, if we're policing what boys can do and play with because that's what boys do and that's what girls do at 4 years old, what's it going to be like when we're 14 and like you get your heart broken? Instead of like, man, I'm really hurting, man, I need to cry. It's like, fuck, bro, just get laid. There's a heap of hoes out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that we do police behaviors. That kid didn't naturally wake up and go, I know Care Bears are for girls.
Yeah.
Some adult in his life has been like, Care Bears are for girls. Pink is for girls. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. I think there's a lot of...
So I think those socializations happen in ways that we don't even think about it quite often. And we need to be mindful of that. We want people to allow boys and girls to display a full range of emotions and behaviors based on not their sex, but on just who they are. Like, if you're a girl and you're into fucking kickboxing and sports, like, don't call her a tomboy. Just call her a person who's into fucking kickboxing and sports.
I totally agree.
You know, if a girl's a teen, you know, we always have this double standard, like, girls who are sexually promiscuous are hoes and thoughts and sluts, and guys are fucking scucks legions.
Yeah.
Am I right? Or
yeah, totally.
Is that true of your lived experience and the way you hear people talk?
That is true, and it's also I've never agreed with that.
Which is awesome.
That is something I've never agreed with.
I respect you for not agreeing with that.
I've never agreed with that.
But we still have that in our culture, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so fucking... That's a social expression. I mean, there's nothing different. You know, women enjoy sex just as much as men. Yeah. You know, like, but socially, we encourage young boys to be legends and studs and chips off the old blocks, and we encourage girls to be fucking retiring wallflowers. And if they're different from that, well, then they're a hoe. And you know, I've definitely heard friends say, she's cool and I'd hook up with her, but she's not like girlfriend material. And you're like, why not? Because she slept around. Like, you've slept around. What, do you know what I mean? It's like a weird social double standard. I don't think that's biological.
No. I would agree that that's... As you get older, I would absolutely agree that the biological side of things definitely disappears. But I don't agree with putting strict labels onto children or nurturing them. They should just be kids.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
They're just kids.
That's exactly the point I'm making. It's like, don't impose a gender construct about how they have to behave. Yeah. Based on their sex.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that there's imposing, but I am saying that there is a nature aspect of male and female.
What people are interested in.
Yes.
I don't actually...
Or the way they... Not so much what they're interested in. I don't agree with that because I was into some feminine stuff when I was younger. We can go into that maybe.
Yeah.
I was into different stuff when I was younger. It was just... For me, it was just colours, shapes, and things like and stuff. But the way I interacted was different.
I would generally have to say I'm not entirely sure of the science on that, so I can't give you an educated answer.
No, me either. Damn it! Let's get someone else in.
Well, I just, like, I'm mindful of, like, hey, if I don't know, I don't know. I don't want to pretend I do.
Yeah, at the end of the day, but as I say, at the end of the day, it's the same as adults. At the end of the day, we treat kids as kids. You know what I mean? You can't label them too young. Just let them do what they want to do, and they'll naturally find their way. Which is
broadly what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, when you take that, what do you... I have this problem now with a lot of people trying to cotton wool things too much.
Yeah, sure.
And that goes for physical, falling off the jungle gym. You land on... When we were young, jungle gyms were like 3 stories high.
My brother broke his collarbone, yeah.
But they were
yeah.
I never forget it. And now you look at them, they're less than half the size.
Yeah.
And, okay, so that's within reason. Okay, I can understand that. No one wants their kids to get hurt. But also people are trying to avoid being offended.
Yeah.
Like offense. And I think you can't avoid offense too much. It's like if you don't let your kids play in the mud, they're not going to develop antibodies to fight diseases or fight certain things. And if you don't allow people to be to get into situations where it could possibly be offensive or make them raise questions or anything like that, if you don't let them
discuss,
get hurt, emotionally as well, within reason, we're not going to develop either. We're not going to build as well.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier about everyone gets like super left or right or this way or that way, and so it kind of becomes people are scared to talk about things for creating like a huge shitstorm.
Yeah.
Or like, I broadly agree with you. Like, I think we should be able to have respectful, agree to disagree discussions without certain things being labeled as offensive, like without having a particular example to talk about. Yeah. I think, that's offensive can be a little bit of a catch-all censorship in a different expression of ideas.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the situation you were in 2016 with that Kardashian tweet.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't even a tweet. It was a comment on someone's Instagram account.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not even my Instagram account. I didn't put a big thing out there. I literally wrote like 6 words.
Yeah. So talking about the toxic fallback of something that can happen on social media, tell me a little bit more about what happened there.
Yeah. So a bro that I'm acquainted with through the gym, like, posted a photo of Kim Kardashian's, now infamous nude selfie, and he wrote a lengthy piece broadly saying that it's hard for young women to find healthy role models when this is what society displays as the gold standard. And I broadly agree and said, Tautoko, I agree with you, I support you. We need to teach healthier ways of validation. Which is true for men and women, because just as is Kim Kardashian, there's 1,000,001 dudes with like bro selfies and their muscles and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, look at me. Yeah. Like, that's true, irrespective of your sex and gender. And that got picked up on by a journalist who included my, Tautoko, I think we need to teach healthy ways, like 8 words, and tried to argue that I was somehow slut-shaming Kim Kardashian. She never talked to me or asked me about my opinion or my worldview or my politics, and included it on a list of, this is a long time, 3 years ago now, of like 10 shitty things New Zealand men did on International Women's Day. I don't remember who else made the list. But it was very unfair because I don't have a problem with people self-objectifying or using their bodies in a sexual manner for commercial gain to improve, I believe in the rights of sex workers. I believe in the right of, but I do, as someone who works with young people and works in schools and is familiar with the literature, think that we need to be mindful that when we teach people that sending out a nude image is what you need to do to young people who don't have critical filters and understandings, they're going to recreate that behavior, and that doesn't lead to healthy outcomes. So I'll go into a school these days, and quite regularly there'll be this big pressure for young women to send boys. We're talking about 13, 14, and 15-year-olds here. Nude images or sex videos, and that'll get sent around the whole school. without any consent or understanding about the ramifications and impacts it's going to have on that young person's life. And that leads to self-harm, suicide attempts, dropping out of school, poor educational attainment. That was the point I'm talking about.
Yep.
When we're talking about healthier ways of validation, there's more to all of us, irrespective of your sex, than how sexy you are or the worth your body can create in the social marketplace. We need to teach people, irrespective of their age, that it's not just how you look and how sexy you might be. And that's one great way to feel good about yourself, for real. I'm not saying like we can't do that, but when routinely we still have quite this superficial culture for young people to emulate.
And we need to talk about the mentality behind doing that.
And so it became this big thing on Twitter that I was like telling women what to do and how to explain what they can and can't do with their bodies. And I was like, I didn't fucking say that. I actually didn't say that.
No, totally.
It literally was one person's take on it through their own lens, and it became like something that it wasn't. And unfortunately, that sort of endured for, I guess, like a small section of people like, yeah, he's that guy who said this about Kim Kardashian. Yeah. But man, mums were messaging me behind the scenes saying, hey, I took a 1,000 nude selfies off my teenage daughter's phone, and it really broke my heart. And there's actually nothing wrong with saying, hey kids, you don't actually need to do it like that. I had fucking famous journalists and politicians, DMing me because they didn't want to get caught up in the Twitter shitstorm saying, hey, chin up, like you didn't actually say anything wrong. Like this is just what life is like in the public eye. And I'm like, I'm not really in the public eye. And then someone was like, well, you are now, whether you fucking like it.
Welcome.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a long time ago, and it was a learning curve, and I didn't handle it very well. I did really sort of like fuck with my mental health a bit. And
but it is an important learning curve, though, with so much of this happening to just normal people as well as people in the public eye. Like, I think that story, what we're talking about now, is important
because it happens all the time now. Yeah.
And we need to talk about how do you recover from that. How did you recover from?
Well, so the article you read was a two-page Herald interview from Steve Brownius, who was just genuinely curious about who I might be, and I was pretty gun-shy of talking to anyone because there's a bunch of media outlets that wanted to talk to me about that experience.
I didn't like the way that he wrote that article. He wrote that article...
No, to be honest, people have said that, but I know Steve personally. Like, I've continued to keep in touch with him. Yeah. That's just how he is. Some people say he was, like, taking a piss a little bit.
It felt like he was making it more about him in some parts of it.
Yeah, I didn't take that away. Like, I genuinely read that article a couple of times, and I was like, Steve just took me how he found me. And you can take it or leave it, but he didn't put a bias over it. And I am like I do cry all the fucking time when I'm talking about shit that's meaningful to me. I get upset, and I am fucking a bit stark and weird and all the other stuff that he talks about in that article. I thought it was a fair representation of who I actually am. Mm-hmm. And to me, I was kind of appreciative of that. I don't care if you don't like me. I do care if you misrepresent my ideas and my politics. You don't have to agree with my ideas and my politics, but to say that I'm someone that I'm not, or I have ideas that I don't, or I have values and views that I've never expressed, it's fucking unfair, and it's really wrong, and we increasingly do that in our soundbite culture. Yeah. And then we wonder why people have got such poor mental health, and why we have so much like acerbic online culture, and why are people like so defensive and quick to outrage and yada yada yada. It's because we just judge people by like 8 words, or by a fucking headline, or something completely misrepresented, or just because you don't want to talk to a journalist doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It just means that you're cognizant of the fact that journalists quite often twist things to fit the narrative that they're trying to fucking portray. So I think, I mean, there's a lot to blame, like in the capitalization of media. I mean, you know, like the for-profit media. Imagine if media didn't have to sell advertising, any media, about how much better the quality of journalism might be. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yep. But if it doesn't
Rather than being the first, you're concentrating on being the most honest.
Yeah, you got to be the first. You got to get the most clicks. What's the spin on that? You know, like there's a primacy towards a negative, and unfortunately that means that we've got an increasingly unhealthy culture. Excuse me.
No, good. Have a drink.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, yeah. So it was a stressful time. How do you recover from that? Well, you just kind of get off the fucking internet, to be honest.
Right?
Yeah. Like,
It's like click and walk away.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, I can get quite, I'm quite an anxious person. I've a predisposition to anxiety, and
Yeah.
getting caught up in something like that really affected that. And
Yeah.
so I was like, fuck, I'm getting character assassinated online. I didn't even do anything, I feel. And I didn't handle it well. I didn't respond that well. I didn't take it like very coolly, you know.
No,
but I've
yeah.
never been at the center of a big outcry like that before.
It almost comes down to if somebody does attack you or start to attack your character, the way to handle it, I could be wrong, is to just ignore it, because the next story is right around the corner.
And that's it, man. Like, that's exactly it. Like, you have to actually have faith in who you are,
Yeah.
and have some in your own integrity. Like, had I actually done something, like committed a crime, and someone, then that would be quite different.
Yeah.
Then I'd have to take ownership for that and acknowledge the harm that I'd caused and that I was wrong, and apologize and proceed to take a course of action that would make me a better person, whether that's counseling or a program or whatever it is. But I hadn't. I'd written 8 words on someone's Instagram account agreeing with them broadly about like a vague idea. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to take stock of that. You have to take stock of yourself and give yourself an honest conversation. Does this really matter? Yes or no? And then respond accordingly. And also getting off the internet. I distinctly remember being like real caught up in my head back then in response to that. Then I went to a fight night. Do you think anyone had even heard about it? No one gave a fuck. You know, like a lot of the stuff that people get caught up with on Twitter in particular, as a place where a lot of journalists and politicians and you know, thinkers and like thought, you know, people who write thought pieces and blogs hang out.
Yeah.
It's really important to them. It's not fucking important to Joe Blogs.
No.
It really isn't. So you actually have to be like, well, what's the bigger picture, you know, and who actually gives a shit?
Yeah.
You know, often it's no one. Is it going to affect my career? Then maybe I need to adjust who I am, what I do, how I express myself. But it's all learning, man. Like, to be honest, like, it made me a more thoughtful, experienced person. Yeah. So when I found myself in the fucking media again lately, I was like, no big deal. I've done this before.
It's not my first rodeo.
It's not my first rodeo.
I've got this down.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. So what's the way forward for men?
Oh, yo, that's a big question.
That's a big question. It's very broad. I might be able to bring it in a little bit. Yeah.
Do you mean to like, okay, so going back to what we were talking about earlier, like what's a healthier conception of masculinity?
Yeah.
Or, it's really multifaceted, but I definitely think that we need...
Oh, sorry, I'll interrupt. Are you a dad?
I'm a stepfather. I don't
Yeah,
have
but
a such child of my own, no.
Cool. But I take it you would treat that child as though it was your own.
Yeah,
for sure.
man, for sure. Yeah, I live with little man, and I've got a good relationship with his dad. And so he's got like he's got 3. He spends a lot of time with his grandfather as well. And it's just about, like we communicate really well, and he's got a really cool upbringing with, you know, I think. I'm really stoked for him. He's got quite a different upbringing that I had, with lots of yelling and shouting and the police coming to my house, you know? And so, like, I'm stoked for him, and I'm stoked to have that chance to sort of role model better behaviors, you know? So, yeah, maybe you want to narrow your question down. What do you mean by the way forwards for men? Like, how do we change? How do we be healthier? How do we stop committing violence against women? How do we commit suicide less? Like,
the thing that my passion is the suicide one. Mental health is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And trying to work out 80% of all suicides are men. And that's a statistic that I heard the other day, and I was like, holy fuck. But it also makes sense from the suicide stories that I've heard. Most of them have been dudes. And I think there's a lot of pressure happening, and this is another reason why the Gillette ad resonated with me a little bit, because I was like, man, no wonder guys are the highest in the suicide rate, because there's so much coming down upon them now. There's where we thinking things too much. It's being clumsily handled, which I think that ad was, clumsily handled to a degree, and that's just compounded on top of a bunch of other stuff as well.
Sure. Okay, cool. So, whether you agree with it or not, the Gillette ad's trying to help in that regards.
Yep.
So from my academic understandings of things and from my work experience around what are some of the drivers of poor mental health for men, it comes back to what we've been discussing, which is those stereotypical notions of masculinity. There's a body of research which I reference a lot when I'm speaking. It's called the Conformity to Masculine Norms Inventory. A guy called Malik, who recently the American Psychological Association just put out 10 points about how psychologists and the mental health professionals should best deal with men in regards to this problems of masculinity. Again, it caused a massive outcry. But it's not all men. But Malik was involved in that research too, as far as I understand. I think so. I definitely know he's done some stuff for the APA. But his research said that the more men try and fit into this box of what they're meant to be based on what society tells them, the more psychological distress that they feel. So if we expect men not to talk about their feelings all the fucking time, because that's what homos and girls do, and not cry, why aren't you earning heaps of money? Oh, what do you mean you stay home with your kid and your girlfriend goes to work and you stay home?
Yeah.
Really? What? Who wears the fucking pants? Pussy whipped. The more we do that sort of stuff, the more distress men feel, more distress boys feel.
Totally.
We have increasing socioeconomic inequality in our society as well. You know, there's a big gap between rich and poor, and that's shown to have a whole bunch of negative mental health outcomes. We have an atomization of society. So we used to have really strong communities and village-type vibes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Increasingly, since Margaret Thatcher said there's no such thing as society, you know, we are all based on our merits as individuals. You know, we're meant to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, and if you're poor, it's because you're lazy, not because of your socio-economic environment and historical causatives of why you might be in that situation. If you're rich, it's because you worked hard, nothing to do with the fact of the color of your skin, gave you a whole bunch of advantages, and your rich parents might have paid for your university tuition. You know, like, we constantly blame the individual for the situation we find themselves in, divorcing themselves from their context. All those things play a role in how men develop and with their poor mental health.
Yeah.
And so part of that is masculinity, those constructs, man. So if you look at, like, how do we encourage men to ask for help? Well, we encourage them to be a bit more vulnerable, and then showcase that to their friends and ask their friends if they're all right, you know, and role model that to their sons and daughters. You know, if I can talk to my friend about my own journey of mental health, maybe if he hits a rut in his life, he might be like, oh, yo, I'm not weak for talking, you know? But a lot of people still feel like they can't open up about what's really going on inside of themselves. And if they do, it's like, oh, well, let's just have some beers and maybe we'll go get you laid, eh? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not unfamiliar conversation for you, right?
No.
As a
Absolutely.
guy I've never met before, but that's your bro culture.
Yeah.
How do we break that down? So it's like, oh, yo, man, that must really hurt. Like, have you explored some counseling? Or, oh, no, that's for fucking sissies. Well, I went to counseling, man, and it's one of the best things I ever did. It really, really helped. And it might not make them go and do it straight away, but it shows, hey, I'm this tattooed fucking kickboxer, and you're a rugby player, and whatever, and, you know, whatever your shit is, that is stereotypically gives you a bro pass.
Yeah.
And I can still do this, and it doesn't make me any less of a man, then that's going to help men. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Taking some of those stereotypical expectations of how men have to behave about finance and having a nice car and you know, like, taking that away as a social expectation that men are meant to be the breadwinners all the time and climb the social ladder and Wolf of Wall Street type shit, you know, like, that's going to be good for male mental health as well. You know, like, once you earn a certain amount of money after that limit, you know, I think it's about 70 grand according to research or some shit like that. It's not like $1 million a year. No. You know, like, once you stop earning once you reach a certain level of financial and material security, you don't exponentially get happier. But our culture still teaches us that you need more and more and more and more and more. Yeah. But what does that do? It means that we have less time with our children, less time for recreation, less time to communicate with our partners, less time to just lie on the fucking couch looking at the ceiling, letting our brain be spacious for a second. You know, like we never get time to just stop and think and feel and just be like, even with the advent, we're talking about social media, we never have a free minute with our brains anymore. You're standing in a queue, you're on your phone. You stopped at a traffic light, you're on your phone. There's a lull in the conversation with all your friends, you're on your phone. We never let our brains have some fucking breathing space.
Some of the happiest moments of my life was when my phone where it goes flat.
Yo,
you know what I mean?
You know what I love? Fucking flying. You know,
What? Yes.
like there's no Wi-Fi.
You're stuck there. It's like, what do I do?
I'm like, cool.
have to use my
Like,
brain.
I'll read a book, you know, I'll just watch a movie, or I'll just sleep, you know, like it's awesome.
I was in a cafe recently, and I try to practice what you're saying. Like, I've always, not always, but recently over the last couple of years, I had some mental issues a couple of years ago. And one of the things I tried to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when people say sorry, so I'm like, I don't know how to react, but thank you. So one of the things, I try to be more present all the time now. Meditation kicked in. I meditated a lot. I went to the gym a lot, and that's for me as a form of meditation.
Me
Diet completely changed. And when I go to cafes and whatnot, I try, and I do this quite a bit. If I'm not working, I'll just put it down and just sit there and just look around. Yeah. And I love it. It's actually really cool.
I've been doing that too.
I don't even pick up a book, like magazines and stuff there. It's like they're just as bad as sometimes what you see on social media. Yeah. So I'm just sitting, I'm just looking around, staring at people, saying hello. Yeah. And some people don't know how to take that.
Yeah.
Some people look at you funny. It's like, what's wrong with you?
Who's this loser with no friends and no phone?
Right.
Yeah.
And you look around and there's people like, oh, like that sort of thing.
I know, and it's bad. Like I love social media. Like social media is a really positive tool for whether it's for your business. Like I've definitely made a business off the back of social media. But at the same time for just sharing good ideas and keeping in touch with your mates and having a laugh at a cool meme, you know. But we do it too much, and that's where the problem lies.
It's an important tool, but it's not an extension of your personality. It's not who you are.
It's not who you are, and a lot of people increasingly do that. Yeah. But I do believe that, and research supports what I'm saying, that breaking down those old restrictive constructs of masculinity is going to help male mental health, and then changing some of those broader social pressures is going to help too. But they're sort of tied in, you know. Like if you're meant to be the breadwinner because you're a man, and you're meant to work hard and have long hours, and then you don't know how to talk about yourself, so you just get on the piss or smash someone up at the pub because they bumped into you and spilled your drink. Well, that's a pathway to self-destruction, man. So
I'd like to see more men hanging out with dudes, like guys hanging out with guys. You know what I mean?
Do you know what I like? It's just when one of my friends who's a dude will call me just to talk. And that doesn't happen that much. I've got like two good friends who call me like, yo, what's up, man? I'm like, yo, what's up? And they're like, just seeing what's up, and we just talk shit for like, and that's cool. I'm like, that never happens. People text you in a utilitarian manner these days. Can you do this? Do you want to do this? I'm like, all right. But it's nice when someone's just like, how are you going? Or what's been up? You know, one of my best friends, Joe, he does that on the regular, and he's like, he's a bro dude, you know, like he's a great fighter and electrician and fucking, you know, like he's a guy's guy. But he's also like a real awesome dad, and he can talk about feelings and ask for help. And like, I'm like, he's a great role model for what we want to try and encourage other men to perhaps be a bit more like, who are stuck in that stereotypical notion of this is what it is to be a man and that's it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
And I love that, bro. I used to do that when I was a kid. Like, so I always had female friends, you know, like, I've always been quite a really talkative, kind of sensitive dude who's like got emo tattoos and shit. And
I can relate to what you're saying.
And a lot of my like good friends in a non-sexual sense were always girls, and we just talk on the phone till like fucking, you know, when you're in high school, you fall asleep on the phone. I don't know if you ever did that, you know.
I had the same thing because when I went to school, I got more out of talking to girls all the time as well. Again, not in a sexual sense. It was just like the conversation was better. I got sick of talking about fucking shagging, drinking, because I was never a big drinker because I took football very seriously.
Yeah, me too.
So I didn't drink a ton.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just didn't really agree with me that much. So I didn't drink a whole lot, and I never did drugs. I never touched drugs until I was in my 30s.
Yeah. But which is good for your neurological health. Good job.
Apparently so.
Your brain's formed up.
Yeah. I'm all there.
Yeah.
I'm not all there. But it was, now I realize that you can't share everything with women in that regard. You've got to be able to spend time with good guys and just get in the DMs, man.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I appreciate you saying that was your experience of conversations with young men when you were young too. And that ties into what I've been banging on about today. Like, if that's what we think we can talk about as men, shagging and beer and who got in a fight, like that limits us, because men are more than that. And that's all the Gillette ad is saying, is that men are more than these things.
Yeah.
Men can be wonderful, fucking anything they want.
Yeah.
Why do we continue to be a bros before hoes culture? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all it's saying.
My brother was interesting. My brother comes to me one day. He's a fully qualified builder, very young. He was 21 when he was qualified. And he quit. And I was like, bro, you've got it all, man. You can go build and all this sort of stuff. Why don't you go and do it?
I wish I'd done a trade. I'd be rich by now.
My bro says to me, I fucking hate them.
Yeah.
I says, what do you hate about them? All they do is talk about fucking and drinking. And I'm like, fair enough. And then I realized that was actually the point where I realized that's why I didn't like hanging out with these people as well. It's just boring. It's just
boring. I'm like,
conversation.
I literally am like I grew up working like physical jobs, you know, like before I went to university and stuff, I did like physical jobs, and it was always like that bro culture. And I was just like, this is not me at all, you know, And so what we see, the academia and my work experience will suggest is that when you're a guy who might not fit into that, you'll put a mask on so people don't tease you or hassle you so much. So you'll pretend to be someone you're not. So you fit in with all the other men are doing. There's a really great documentary on Netflix called The Mask We Live In. And it's all about those stereotypical constructs of masculinity. You wake up every day, you're like, well, I have to be like this so people don't tease me and I can fit in and I can get some sort of social passes. Yeah. But if you pretend to be someone you're not for a long enough time, you're going to end up very, very unhappy and potentially very, very unwell.
Yeah. Yeah, and that comes down to the people that you surround yourself with. If you notice that you're surrounding yourself with people who you feel so obliged to change yourself, then you might want to rethink about
who you're hanging out with. Yeah, because humans are social creatures. We need love and connection and friendship. Yeah. But so we'll do whatever it takes to get that. Yeah. And that's to our own detriment sometimes.
But I think there's also a certain amount of we can't help it sometimes though. You're hanging out with certain types.
I mean, I hang out with regular,
but you hang
out with a whole bunch of people, man. Like, it's crazy the spectrum of people I know. Yeah.
Something I've learned in the similar sort of vein, working in the industry like advertising, and you just so many different people in entertainment.
Yeah, and you just have to learn to be like, okay, well, I don't agree with you. Am I going to cause a big argument about that? Maybe, but maybe not. You know, I think it's time and place to respectfully challenge people's bullshit. Yeah. Like the Gillette ad shows.
But there's a way of
doing it.
Yeah. And I think we as individuals have to commit to learning the ways of doing that.
Yeah, and that's the path I've been on. Yeah. And because I used to be like one of those like fucking angry self-righteous dudes. And now I'm kind of like, oh, hey, maybe you didn't think about it like that. Or, hey, I know you don't mean anything by that, but when you say this, or, do you know? Or have you considered how that makes that person feel? Or, you know, I know you don't think wolf whistling's scary, but in a culture where women are routinely victims of sexual violence, when you wolf whistle, it makes people feel uncomfortable and scared. You know, like, and then bros can get into it. Like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about it. Shot, bro. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And instead of being like, fuck you, you fucking fuck, like, you're a bad person for doing that. Yeah. The person is like, what? Fuck you back. Because that's what happens when you attack people. They get defensive.
They get defensive and they get angry. And then someone throws a punch, another throws a punch, and then it's all on.
Yeah. Or you know, taking the physicality of it online or whatever, it's just like, well, I'm just going to stay behind my wall, and you're going to stay behind your wall, and we're never going to have shared understandings of anything. Yeah. We're always going to think each other are bad people.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's where the world seems to be heading at the moment. In a grand scale, take America, and then on a minuscule scale, like not a minuscule, but a smaller scale, like in the home and just basic conversation.
I know, and that's no good, man. Like,
we should be talking not to win, but to come to a conclusion of what we're trying to talk about.
Shared understandings. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Bro, this has been outstanding.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Good, man.
This has been cool, man.
No worries.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation.
No worries.
I've warmed up into it. Yeah.
Anything else you want to cover while we're here? Anything that you feel that you want to get out there?
No, this has been cool. Brother. Yeah, no. I mean, not at all, man. I mean, if you're genuinely interested in any of these issues, then feel free to flick me an email. I'll give you my details later. You know, like anyone listening is like, well, where do I find out about ideas about masculinity or whatnot? You can check out whiteribbon.org.nz. There's some ideas about better parenting for sons. if you're interested in ideas about sexual violence prevention, you can check out. These are all pretty boring, but
no, man, that's not at all. Like, you say it all now, and then people can always go back and look.
Ministry of Social Development's It's Not Okay campaign's done some good work. There's an American channel called Be Frank that I really like. They're like a young sort of
I've heard of it. Yeah.
hip sort of like social media channel. They do some cool videos about sex and consent and yada yada yada. If you're interested in masculinity, there's a whole bunch of really good videos online. There's a guy called Jackson Katz. He did a really good TED talk. You could explore his work. A guy called Robert Jensen. I really like his work. He's a professor that I've swapped a bunch of emails with over the years, based in Texas.
Cool.
If you're interested in mental health, I'm a big fan of my friend Mike King and his organization, The Key to Life Charitable Trust. Mike spends all year going to schools talking about mental health.
I'd love to
and
get Mike
suicide
on
prevention.
here.
He's a great dude, man. He's super busy. He's like booked out every day.
Yeah.
But you can check them out. They do really, really great work. If you are like, where do I help my friend? 1737 is a national 24/7 text or call line where you'll always get a counselor. So if anyone's ever listening to this interview and is like, how do you help someone who might need a professional help? That's a free one.
Yep.
These are just things people always ask me. If here's some shit. If you are a victim or a survivor of sexual violence, you could check out Rape Prevention Education. They have pathways to where you can get counselling, or SAPAN, Sexual Abuse Prevention Network. These are obviously all New Zealand based.
Yep.
They have pathways to help in counselling as well. Also, Safe to Talk is another sexual survivor of sexual assault line that the government has. I forget the text number off the top of my head, but it's free counselling specific to sexual assault. Or Safe to Talk. They're really good.
Right.
They do really good work.
Man. I'll put all these links on.
Yeah, please. That'd be dope, bro. That'd be
For
really,
sure.
really cool. And thank you very much. It's
Awesome,
been nice.
man.
I really appreciated the conversation.